けましておめでとうございます。本年も侍-MLB チャンネルをどうぞよろしくお願いいたします。現地もすっかりクリスマス休暇から明け、早速公式番組が放送を再開していました。現在の現地放送の注目の的は、佐々木朗希投手の移籍先、イチロー選手の殿堂入り、2025シーズンの MVP の行方などのようですね。翻訳してお届けいたしますので、ぜひ最後までご覧ください。
Depending on the team and what their international pool money is, the maximum that he could get is $6 million. That's the rules there. A few years back in 17, Ohtani got like 2.3.
You're right. Good point.
So what makes him super attractive is, and Major League hitters at WBC saw what he has, is that, Matt, this guy, he's 6'2", it says he's 185, you can see he's slender, he throws over 100. He touched 103 miles an hour. This is smooth, easy gas. So anybody, you don't have to be, a professional pitching coach or guru to know that there's a lot to work with when it's smooth, fastball at 101, 102. This is the national pitch, folks. Japanese pitchers, they throw a splitter, and it is nasty. He's got two different breaks. It looks like a slider at times, goes away to the righty and into the righty. This is awesome. He does have a third pitch, which is a slider, which is good. Look at this pitch right here, the Verdugo. I mean, that is just split like forkball. Those two pitches make him premium. What makes him interesting is that he's cheap. It'd be no different than if you were going around and drafting a college kid or high school kid. Mm-hmm. That's the way they're looking at 23. You're not having to give him a Yamamoto 12-year, $300+ million deal. There's some things in his delivery. Not yet. Things in his delivery, you know me, I'm a stickler on that. I don't love, but again, he hooks in the back and he does some things. He gets long. He's real late at foot cut. But sidebar that. His stuff says premium. He also was overused. He had a 8-day window where he threw over 500 pitches in high school. 500. But he had a 12-inning game. He threw almost 200 pitches.
I mean, there's stories like that on every one of those.
I know, but they're not throwing 100.
Darvish, all those guys used to get worked in high school.
His velocity was down. So I'm picking now. But and again, I think because he's cheap and he possesses that velocity 2 years ago, 98 point something. This past year, 96 point something.
Why don't you like the rapper? You don't like that?
No.
A lot of guys that have done that. Russ Ortiz, Sutcliffe.
I know. And I'm not saying it can't work or doesn't work. I mean, Tanaka was it's just a long path, and there's some things. And then he's late at foot contact, which kind of leaves the arm vulnerable. But I'm not. I would take this guy in a second. And stuff-wise, with respect to his fastball and nasty split, that's front-end stuff.
Yep.
What that looks like 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road is JP
Morosi is
What's
already...
not to like? He's tremendous.
Tremendous. He is killing it in the new year. You had me at facial hair, honey. Happy New Year to you. You look fantastic. How are you?
Well, Lauren, thank you very much. I'm just trying it out. This is not something that I necessarily expect I will keep for the MLB Central portion of our year. But something different to start the new year off. I was in the Dominican Republic. My family, I just decided not to shave for a while, and we're going to see how long this lasts.
I love it.
There's
you look
a lot
good.
of good-looking dudes in
you
baseball.
You are one of the very good-looking dudes in baseball. Corbin Burns is in that category, as is Jack Flaherty. Our attention on him on the grandest stage in the postseason. What uniform will he be in come spring training? What do you think?
Well, Lauren, there was the report recently from The Athletic about there being mutual interest in a reunion between Jack Flaherty and the Baltimore Orioles. And I was listening carefully to the A block of the show as Al and Matt talked about it. And I can confirm that there is some legitimate interest in conversation between the Orioles and Jack Flaherty about Flaherty coming back. Now, yes, his results when he came over in the trade in 2023 were a little bit up and down, but he is a different pitcher now. He had a healthy, productive season, as you see there, between the Tigers and the Dodgers in 2023. And the Orioles realize, as Matt and Al documented, they need at least one more arm. And I was actually told just this morning, Dylan Cease is still a possibility too. So whether it's via trade or free agency, I would be stunned, Lauren, if the Orioles do not add at least one more recognizable name between now and when pitchers and catchers gather in Sarasota, now just about 5 weeks away.
Think about that.
Of course, spring training is getting ever closer. So yes, the Orioles still working very diligently to add one more arm to that rotation.
As a beltweight, baby, I like that news. So pitchers in one category, bats in another. We always use that. We always talk about Anthony Santander and the number 44 career year for him. A lot of teams could use his services. Who is at the top of that list right now?
Well, let's start with Toronto, Lauren, because we know the Blue Jays have been very active in free agency, but they have yet to land the big piece. And they finished second or third, depending on your interpretation of different free agent pursuits so far this winter. At some point, a major name will take their offer, and that person could be Anthony Santander, who knows the American League East very well. Of course, the success that he had in Baltimore. The Tigers are also involved in the Santander sweepstakes. Evan Petzold has reported on this as well in the Detroit Free Press. And the Los Angeles Angels have also been mentioned as a fit. I tend to think, though, Lauren, that the Tigers and Blue Jays are near the top of the list, if not the number one or number two potential suitors for Anthony Santander. His market could potentially move, and I know we'll get more into Alex Bregman's market later on in the show, but Bregman and Santander, there is some overlap there. We've seen the Tigers linked to Bregman. We've seen also the Red Sox linked to Alex Bregman. I do think the Santander and Bregman markets are linked in some way, shape, or form because of the potential involvement of the Blue Jays and the Tigers in both of those pursuits.
Yeah, once one lands, the other will fall. It's a trickle-down effect. What about the relief market? Is it as slow as maybe it seems to us?
Yeah, Lauren, it's a great question. I think with Tanner Scott, I would have thought he would have signed by now, especially given the way that he pitched last year and the way he closed the season out with the San Diego Padres. Interestingly, there was one team mentioned that we weren't necessarily expecting to be a heavy player in the relief market, that being the Atlanta Braves. Dave O'Brien reporting in The Athletic recently, the Braves have had some interest in Tanner Scott. And it also feels to me like the Los Angeles Dodgers could make one more big-time splash. And maybe that would be one area where they go to add a Tanner Scott from their division rival, San Diego Padres. As we talked about, the Padres probably not having enough financial flexibility to add Scott unless they trade someone else, like potentially a Dylan Cease. And we have heard a bit about Jack Flaherty and the Padres too, but I tend to think Tanner Scott has to be that first significant domino to fall among the available relievers still out there. But let's not forget Jeff Hoffman's name is still there too, and he was a really important arm for the Philadelphia Phillies, and Carlos Estevez's name is still out there. So of all the different possibilities, yeah, we talk a lot about the significant bats still available in Santander and Bregman, but I think the relief market is one spot where if you're a smart buyer who has preserved a little bit of flexibility in terms of your spending, you could make a lot of impact late in the market for a late inning relief.
Imagine the Dodgers sign him. I mean, Dodger fans certainly can. Al was talking earlier in the show. You said you were watching the A block about Roki Sasaki, and he was kind of putting into perspective what kind of talent we can expect. The window's been open for a couple weeks now. JP, where is he in the process?
Well, he's meeting with teams now, and reportedly he's met with at least 6 teams as that signing window approaches. Now remember, we're about 13 days away from the start of the next signing period on January the 15th. So we'll probably find out Sasaki's destination between the 15th and 23rd of January. According to MLB.com, the teams that have met with them already, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, Cubs, Rangers, and Giants. I still believe the Padres are going to have a significant impact in that marketplace too. The key thing, Lauren, of course, the age of 23. That's why he is not going to be able to sign a mega-dollar deal. He's still considered an international amateur by the rules of the CBA. He's going to sign, and Joel Wolf, his agent, did hold an availability recently with reporters in talking about how Sasaki's eventual goal is to be one of the best ever. This is a long-term play. It's not about maximizing the market size of the money right now. It's about what team with their pitching plan can put him on the best trajectory to becoming a legend of Major League Baseball over the next 15 to 20 years. And that's a much different way of looking at something than the highest dollar. So I'm going to be really interested to see what truly appeals to Roki. And I think the key thing, and Al knows this from having watched him, Very talented arm, but he is not yet a finished product. He's much more of a prospect than Yamamoto was this time a year ago. So for so many reasons, Lauren, he's a fascinating person to talk about in the market this winter.
Yeah, he's being patient, narrowing teams down. Keep us posted, JP, as you hear more. Thank you so much. JP Morosi, lucky and deserving enough to have a Hall of Fame vote. Good morning again to you, JP. I know it's an honor for you to do this every year. Who did you vote for?
Lauren, I love this question. I love this topic. And so here, for the very first time, I have not shared this on social media anywhere. Here is my Hall of Fame ballot for 2025. I have again gone with 10 names: Beltran, Burley, Andrew Jones, Ian Kinsler, Brian McCann, Jimmy Rollins, Sabathia, Ichiro, Utley, and Wagner. Now, my explainer on the philosophy that I have here. Certainly, the historic contributions to the game are the most important. Did the players dominate, and did they help define the era in which they played? I also look at things this way, and this came into play with someone like Kinsler and McCann. I want to make sure that players who I believe are worthy of this consideration do not fall off the ballot after just 1 year. And so I often, at the end of my ballot for spots 8, 9, and 10, I will look at it and say, are there players who are perhaps in jeopardy of falling off the ballot after just 1 year? And how do I help boost their case to make sure that historically they get more of a hearing from the voters? And in the particular cases of Kinsler and McCann, I believe their careers to be historically significant and worthy of remaining on the ballot more than 1 year. I looked at McCann, his number one most similar player in the history of the game, Salvador Perez, who I believe is a worthy Hall of Famer. That made me give a second look to McCann's candidacy. And if you look at Kinsler's credentials in comparison to Chase Utley's, for example, I'd have a hard time voting for Utley and not Kinsler. So hoping they stay on the ballot for at least 1 year, and perhaps more voters will tend to look at the cases of Kinsler and McCann in the way that I do.
You know, you asked, did the player dominate, JP, for how long? What is the sustained greatness amount of years, if that makes sense? CC pitched for 19 seasons, right? 180 innings the first 13 years of his career. Are you looking for a 3-year window, a 10-year window? What is it?
It was certainly closer to 10 than it is to 3, which is why in the past, and certainly one of the names I thought about on this year's ballot, Felix Hernandez. Was there enough of a time horizon in which Felix was dominant? I really thought a lot about Felix. I thought again about a Torrey Hunter. I thought about a Pedroia. I thought about a Pettit. There's a lot of really great players here who I did not have space to vote for. And I would say this. If you're a player that dominates the league for 10 to 12 years, that's an easy choice. That's Sabathia. That's Ichiro Suzuki, who I hope ends up being a unanimous choice. I hope players like Andrew Jones, who was, by the way, a dominant player for a full decade. The first decade of his career was almost as much of a no-doubt Hall of Famer as you're going to find. He tailed off after that, but I still believe that does not take away from the brilliance of Andrew Jones's first 10 years. And Carlos Beltran, I think, was a dominant player for more than a decade. So this is how we can use that term, Lauren. Dominance means something different. The inner circle of Derek Jeter was dominant perhaps in a different way than Ian Kinsler was, obviously. And that's why Jeter was a very clear and easy decision, and Kinsler was one that I had to think about a lot. But part of the idea here, and this is something I feel very strongly about, Lauren, I don't necessarily weight as heavily how many MVPs a player has, how many Cy Youngs a player has. I look at it as it is our job as voters to render a more complete thought and decision about a player's career. And someone like a Scott Rowland, someone like an Adrian Beltre, who were great players, maybe weren't necessarily all-stars or MVPs as often as you would like, but that's our job, to look at the full career in context. And if there are those that argue that Utley or Pedroia are deserving Hall of Famers, look at the number of years that Kinsler played, the number of games that he played, And I look at him as maybe not quite as strong of a candidate as Jimmy Rollins, but he compiled a lot of really strong numbers at a position in second base that you rarely see someone in the range of 200 home runs. Look at his combination of home runs, stolen bases, games played, number of times he was on a playoff team, and yes, he helped the Red Sox win a World Series in 2018. Kinsler, for me, is a very deserving player. One shy of 2,000 hits. You have that number of RBI, home runs, and close to that number of hits as a second baseman while winning multiple Gold Gloves, multiple-time All-Star. Ian Kinsler is someone who deserves consideration, and Brian McCann does as well, candidly. When you talk about Salvador Perez, if we're going to think about Buster Posey and Joe Mauer as being clear first ballot Hall of Famers, the gap between them and Brian McCann is not as big as perhaps those that would say that Mauer and Posey are clearly in Cooperstown and McCann somehow isn't. I have an issue with that. McCann, at the very least, belongs on the ballot for multiple years. When you look at his number of games played, hits, RBI, home runs, 7 All-Star teams, 6 Silver Sluggers. He wins a World Series title with the Astros in 2017. Look at the number of times he was on postseason teams with the Braves and the Yankees and the Astros. Brian McCann belongs in this conversation as among the best catchers of his time, and I'm not at all going to discredit what he has done simply because maybe players like Posey, Mauer, Salvador Perez a little bit easier, or Yadier Molina. There's a lot of great catchers in this time. Russell Martin is someone who deserves, I think, a look as well. So this is why I love this ballot. I like making the case for people for whom maybe they're overlooked a little bit by other voters.
And you do it so well. It's fascinating to hear everyone's reasoning. You mentioned each year. I remember back before 2001, everyone was wondering if his skills would translate, right? And then he had a rookie season for the ages. What do you remember about that transition from Japanese baseball to Major League Baseball for him?
Lauren, he changed the game because, to your point, at that moment in time, we had seen Hideo Nomo come over and succeed. Kaz Sasaki had succeeded as a reliever, but we had not yet seen a Japanese position player thrive as an everyday position player in MLB. Well, Ichiro changed the game in so many ways. And one thing I love about Ichiro, that there's a wonderful graphic that is out there and shows number of hits through the age 26 season for players that eventually arrived at 3,000. And Tony Gwynn already had a lot of hits by the time he was 26, and so did Derek Jeter. Ichiro Suzuki, when he was through his 26th season, had 0 hits, Lauren. He had the same number of hits as you and I did through our age 26 seasons, okay?
Speak for
but Ichiro
yourself.
Suzuki arrives it was a great scouting video of you, by the way, earlier on in the show, Lauren. But you and Ichiro had the same number of hits through age 26, okay? You haven't even turned 26 yet, but that was the case for Ichiro.
Glad you brought that point up.
So Ichiro gets his first hit, age 27, and somehow still gets to 3,000. Why? Because he's one of the greatest bat-to-ball hitters that we have ever seen in the history of the game. And Lauren, I'm going to say this. I cannot wait. We're about 2 weeks away from being in Cooperstown for the big ballot reveal. I cannot wait to see the number of Japanese reporters and media who are there just for the vote in January in that beautiful town, let alone who are there in June. We're about to see the year of Ichiro, and I just cannot wait to see my colleagues in the Japanese media there in January.
Can I jump in here for a second and interrupt you? I mean, there are big hall people and there are enormous hall people, and I'm putting you in that category with your 10-person ballot every year. Let me ask you this, and I don't want to turn this into like me mounting a case against a guy, but did you vote for Jeff Kent?
I did. Of course I did.
All right. So, okay, good. Because you can't have Ian Kinsler on your ballot and not having voted for Jeff Kent. Because Jeff Kent's numbers completely crush Ian Kinsler's numbers. I mean, it's not even close in RBIs, homers. The best power hitter at his position ever is not in the Hall of Fame. So
it's a travesty.
It's not a statement on Kinsler at all. It's just that I still can't get over Jeff Kent not being in the Hall of Fame. I think it's wrong. JP, good stuff, man. An impassioned case for Brian McCann and Ian Kinsler to remain on the ballot. Let's be clear. Not necessarily get in, but to remain on the ballot. Good stuff. As we mentioned, getting into break, Anthony, good morning. The 2025 calendar year is only just beginning, and you've already been nice enough to peer into it to give out some postseason awards. I guess, as we say good morning and Happy New Year, define what it is you've done here in a piece that'll hit the website tomorrow, we should mention, and you're kind enough to give us a preview. How are you getting your head around this?
Yeah, well, I always like to say, Matt, it's never too early to be wrong. So we're all going to be wrong with our award picks anyway. We can make picks in the mid-season and often be wrong. So why not just get it out of the way in January? I've done it the last several years. I look back at last year and I went 1 for 8. I got Paul Skeens Rookie of the Year correct. So that's something to hang my hat on.
Who'd you have on MVP?
Oh, man. I had Juan Soto, so I was close. In the National League, I honestly don't remember. I've already
just throw it out there.
From my
Say
brain.
Bryce Harper.
Oh, I had Bryce Harper. I actually did. Yeah, that's right.
Well, speaking of MVP, let's start right there. And again, you're previewing a column that's going to hit MLB.com tomorrow. Who are your way too early MVPs?
Yeah, I think it's obvious. I mean, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani will repeat, and so I'm going to go chalk. Wait a minute. Well, hold on. Wait a minute. I'm getting an image in my head all of a sudden. It's just hitting me, guys. This is crazy. I'm seeing Riley Green of the Tigers accepting the AL MVP award. This is completely unexpected. But wow, I mean, there's a case for it, I guess. Best everyday player for a Tigers team that's on the rise. They just added Gleyber Torres, a little more support. They're all in on Alex Bregman, maybe more support coming. Former 5th overall pick, first-time All-Star last season. His barrel rate jumped to the 90th percentile in MLB.
Wow.
His walk rate rose last year. His chase rate dropped. He might be ready to pop, guys. I'm as surprised as you. And then the National League, all of a sudden I'm seeing Fernando Tatis Jr. of the Padres, who, of course, was a popular MVP pick prior to suspension and injuries. They've really marred his career, but he missed 2 months last year, but .520 slugging percentage down the stretch in his last 70 regular season games. He went 11 for 26 with 7 extra base hits in the postseason. He'll be 26 this year. He's been the best defensive right fielder by outs above average since he made that, unusual move from shortstop to right field. So as he progresses and makes better swing decisions, I guess he's going to be MVP because that's what I'm seeing all of a sudden. Strange.
I don't hate either one of those. I agree with you that, Judge and Ohtani are going to be the chalk, but if you had to go off the board for someone else, I like both of those picks. I think it's more wide open when you talk about Cy Youngs. Yes. Last year, Tarik Skubal was not chalk, certainly not. But he was also, I think he closed at 11-1. So he was in that kind of top group of starters. My guy last year was Cole Ragans, who I understand you like for 2025.
Yeah, I'm getting an image of Cole Ragans in my head, too. I don't know why, but, because there's a lot to like about Tarik Skubal repeating, but it's a different lefty in the AL Central with Cole Ragans, who had a 3.14 ERA last year, 186 innings. We saw the seeds of that in 2023 after the trade from Texas. He moves back to a rotation role and really thrived. And then last year took another huge step forward. He struck out almost 30% of batters faced. His fastball was better. His changeup was already excellent. So yeah, Matty, he finished 4th last year. No reason to think he can't make that next leap in 2025. And the National League, I'm going off the grid. I'll go with Justin Steele, because I like to pick guys before they make the big surge. And he finished 5th in 2022. I think my only issue with this potential pick is the strikeout rate going to be, elite enough? I don't think it will be. But this guy, he limits hard contact. Now, he's had trouble staying healthy. Who hasn't? I think when you're picking Cy Young this early, it's like you're just trying to pick somebody who can post up for 30 starts. I don't know if he can do that or not, but he did post up for 24 last year. He was 30% better than the league average. Like I said, he limits hard contact. And I do see the Cubs being a better club this year, and he would be a big, at the forefront of that.
Couple good dart throws, and if the park factors can stay as pitching favorable at Wrigley as they were last year, why not Justin Steele?
日本ではこの3日間は休暇モードですが、向こうは1月2日からほぼ平常運転開始という感じですね。皆様はどんな年末年始をお過ごしでしたか？ 私はドジャースの開幕戦のチケットが抽選から漏れてしまって、次の申し込みにかけようと心新たにしたところでございます。今年もたくさんのメジャーリーグの情報を翻訳してお届けしてまいりますので、ぜひ今年もよろしくお願いいたします。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。さようなら。